Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a really fascinating look under the hood of indie game development. We're going to dive into the exact development roadmap for the 18 bytes game Treasure Hunter, which was built entirely from the ground up in the Gandhi IDE. Whether you're a seasoned programmer, an aspiring designer, or honestly just someone who appreciates a highly organized workflow, this breakdown is going to be incredibly insightful. We have a clear, step-by-step ledger of exactly how a game goes from a totally blank screen to a finished product. Picture this for a second. Think about the games you play. Consider the sheer effort, the intense time management, and the creative energy it takes to conjure a functioning, interactive game world from absolutely nothing. You need art, mechanics, a story, and the code to tie it all together, right? People usually assume this takes months or even years of endless grinding. But what if you had a hyper-focused plan? What if you tracked every single hour? 52. Literally just 52 hours. That is the exact amount of highly structured, dedicated work it took to bring this project to the finish line by October 5th. And this wasn't some sprawling studio team either. The whole project was executed by just two developers, Virat 18 Kohli 72 and RNVK 18. By breaking down their 52-hour roadmap, we're getting an absolute masterclass in project management and game design efficiency. Let's kick things off with Section 1, laying the visual foundation. What's super fascinating here is how perfectly the duo divided up their very first objective. Game development is often this huge balancing act, but here we see a flawless division of labor right out of the gate. Developer Virat 18 Kohli 72 focused entirely on the characters and moving elements, spending 5 hours designing sprites. Meanwhile, developer RNVK 18 spent an equal 5 hours totally focused on the environment, designing the backdrops. Spanning from August 10th to the 15th, in just 10 combined hours of work, they had the entire visual foundation of their world completely realized. Moving into those first couple of weeks, the pacing is just relentless. Once the art was locked in on August 15th, they didn't pause for a second. They immediately started layering mechanical systems right over that fresh art. By point 2, between August 16th and 18th, they were already tackling basic scrolling, home screens, and basic animations. And then, as we hit point 3, we see a shift into much more complex systems, like the text engine, which carried them through the end of August. It's just a totally logical, rapid progression from visual assets straight to interactive elements. Which brings us to Section 2, Mechanics, Animation, and NPCs. During this incredibly fast prototyping phase, just look at the time spent. Virat 18 Kohli 72 and RNVK 18 collaborated super closely, completely pooling their efforts. Together, they knocked out basic scrolling along with the home and load screens in just an hour and a half between August 16th and 17th. Over the very next day, they spent 2 hours wiring up all the basic animations, and immediately following that, they spent another 2 hours creating all the abilities and their specific animations. So in less than 6 working hours, spread over a few days, the game went from a static painting to a playable prototype. But then, right after that sprint, they hit a heavy lift. Task 5 required a massive 7-hour block of time between August 21st and 27th just to build out the text engine and dialogue animation. If you've ever built a game, you know the absolute headache of getting text to render smoothly, making it scroll correctly without breaking the engine, and tying it to character dialogue. It is a complex, tedious process. This single task literally took more time than the basic scrolling, the main screens, and all the character abilities combined. It just goes to show that both developers fully understood they needed a robust narrative system, and they were willing to put in the hours to get it right. Wrapping up the first half of development, the developers spent 4 hours jointly creating NPC abilities and animations, basically bringing the enemies and bystanders to life. Then, Virat 18 Kohli 72 took on a 4-hour solo task to design all types of UI bars, health bars, stamina bars, experience meters, wrapping up on September 7th. And then, the most crucial structural decision of the whole project, a rest period. From September 8th to the 11th, absolutely no work was logged. Taking a 3-day break like that is brilliant project management. They just spent a month mapping out visuals, mechanics, and complex engines. A rest prevents burnout and completely resets the mind before you have to dive into the heaviest coding work. All right, moving on to Section 3, the main coding structure. This marks a dramatic shift straight into the heavy core architecture. Out of the 52 total hours they had, Task 8's core coding takes up 10 hours, and the finishing touches take up 9. That means just tying the game together and polishing it required 19 hours, a massive chunk of their entire time budget.
It's a fantastic reminder that making the individual pieces is kind of just half the battle. Getting them all to talk to each other seamlessly, that's where the real heavy lifting happens.
Let's zoom in on that major 10-hour chunk. Task 8 ran from September 12th right through to the 20th. This required heavy, uninterrupted collaboration between Virat 18 Kohli 72 and RNV K18. This is the nervous system of the game right here. All the sprites, the backdrops, the text engine, the UI bars, they mean absolutely nothing if the central logic doesn't hold them together. Spending 10 full hours strictly on the main coding structure ensures the game runs without crashing, the rules are strictly enforced, and the Gandhi IDE can handle all the memory and scene transitions flawlessly.
And that leads us to the grand finale, Section 4, Boss Battles and Polish.
Welcome to the final crunch time, the last 23 hours of development. After locking in the core code on September 20th, Virat 18, Kohli 72, and Aaron VK18 immediately pivoted to making the boss battle. They spent 4 hours over 4 days crafting this specific encounter. A boss battle is the ultimate test of a player's skills, so it makes total sense to isolate it as its own major event. Finally, the polish. From September 25th all the way to October 5th, they spent a grueling 9 hours applying finishing touches, weaving in the story, and building out the help book. They didn't just stop when the code finally worked, they invested heavily in the player experience to make sure the narrative was crystal clear.
And so, on October 5th, they crossed the finish line. In the developers' own notes, they literally wrote, "It all ends. Total 52 hours." This entire functioning 18 gigabytes treasure hunter game was engineered from absolute scratch. From the first 5 hours of drawing sprites to the final 9 hours of story polish, Virat 18 Kohli 72 and Aaron VK18 demonstrated incredible discipline. They didn't waste time, they assigned clear roles, they tackled the hardest engines together, they actually scheduled a break, and they budgeted almost half their total time just to structure and polish the final product.
This roadmap is total proof that with the right structure, massive, daunting goals just become manageable step-by-step tasks. So I leave you with this question to think about. Could you build a world in 52 hours? If you mapped out your tasks, divided the labor, and truly committed to the timeline, what could you create in an environment like the Gandhi IDE? The blueprint is right here in front of you. Now it's your turn to start building.